What's up? Jesse here. So, I had mentioned that I'm going to document more of this stuff that I'm building, and I had also mentioned a chess app that I'm building for me and my buddies. So, to give just a bit of context, I'm in the middle of this course called boot.dev, and this is the first unguided project. Just quick shout out to boot.dev. Really, honestly, I think the best like progression in terms of the way the course is structured that I've experienced. And so, anyways, so first unguided project, I had an idea for a Mac OS Windows manager. There's this open source project called Yabai that I was going to leverage, and then just kind of make some nice, sort of like a key bindings wrapper around it. Only problem is you have to disable some security features on your machine, on your Mac, at boot time. And I really wanted to build something that people would actually use. And specifically, I just wanted to make something that was like kind of fun. So, ended up on chess. Now, initial idea was just to build chess, just going to be me and my buddies. And one of the things I thought about was, well, it would be kind of nice if there was basically a sort of a game station in sense, where I could have a game, and if I wanted to build other games down the line, it would be really easy just to kind of like plug them in and still have the same interface and play a new game with my friends. And so kind of where I have landed, I think, is effectively this kind of ideas. So this would be kind of at start time of your program. You boot up, you see what other players are currently online. I will get a little bit into kind of how I am thinking about what users you actually see that are online. Like, is this an exhaustive list of all the players? Is it just your friends? Like, how does this kind of practically work? How do you know when they're online? That sort of thing. So this is kind of there's a lot more fleshing out that has to happen for this particular part. But then you have this option at the home screen to pick a new game. You choose a game, and this is kind of the thing that I was just saying, is you have these options that you can choose from. And so maybe I want to build checkers next, or connect four, or conceivably you could add something cool like tanks, where you have like little tanks driving around, and you and your buddies are shooting projectiles at one another and stuff. That would be really fun. Also, I think an interesting sort of proof of concept game for a real-time game that also could support multiplayers. I think there would be some fun, like sending messages back and forth and like actually populating those changes across all the clients would be pretty cool to kind of see in action. So let's just kind of, I'll say one thing. I think it would be nice to have like a game performance history window. That would be, I think, the game perf like file or whatever would need to live in the game specific directory. I'll get into directory structure in a bit. But so just something simple where it's just showing your win-loss tie, and maybe like if you've got how badly did I beat people, or whatever, like some kind of nice view would be cool there. So let's say we're picking a new game. We pick chess. We pick our opponent. They're this first person. The chess game would get populated into the window like this. I am going to be using Tkinter again because it's the kind of client view that I have done something with. Do I love Tkinter? No, but it's what I'm going to use. So this would basically be like a chess.com rip, effectively, just like from a client view. One thing I thought would be nice to have in any game is basically a chat pane. The thing is, I don't think the chat pane needs to exist in all the different games. Like this would be a toggleable personal setting. Oh, I would also have a personal settings screen where you can change stuff. So one of those examples would be, do you want to have a chat pane? And that could actually, I believe, exist outside of the game functionality. It would just be a thing that like this outer process that's sort of managing all your games would be able to control. And so then the idea would be you would probably also have like an active games somewhere. And your active games, you would be able to like swap between those, be able to switch in between your different active games. And so if you're playing like 3 or 4 chess games with somebody and playing checkers with 3 or 4 people, you could kind of like switch between those. Maybe there's adding a timer or something up here. A lot of chess is played on a timer, so that's kind of the idea. This one was just basically kind of showing off the logic here that like the games themselves, the games and the game client really just kind of attaches to the game station window. That's sort of the idea here. So I'm imagining from sort of a structure perspective, like if this is our outer directory, this is kind of like the most outer scoped directory. We'd have something to this effect. We'd have our main.py, which is the root process. I think there's some interesting stuff that would need to happen when your program kicks off. And there's some kind of continuous actions that need to happen. This will tell us a little bit more about that in a sec. But so then you'd have your home screen window, personal settings window, game history window. I think the game history, so like chess performance, checkers performance, I think at like start time, maybe you do like an async await, like you basically in the background you're reading these things, and you populate some kind of structure, and then that basically just listens for changes in these files. Not exactly sure exactly what form that takes for sure yet. The thing is, I think it's just like IO is a pain, and so if you can do it less frequently, great. Or perhaps maybe even more reasonably, at start time, you read from these, or maybe game performance is a completely separate like subdirectory. I don't know. But at start time, you read from these things, build out your kind of your map of game performance. And so then when somebody's switching in between checkers, chess, like a selector over here, you're not having to open a file, read a file, especially if that file is getting particularly big. Yes, probably would make more sense to just have a database, but I don't know SQL yet, or how to do databases. So incoming, that's a later module in boot.dev. And so database would probably make more sense here, but we're not there yet. That said, you'd have these different views that you could basically switch back and forth between. The communication protocol, this will make more sense when we look at that in a second. I want the communication protocol to be general. So I want it to be this root process uses the same sort of endpoint to talk between users at different nodes. And so there's going to need to be some logic in the actual games. And like the main thing of like, okay, we just got a message. What game is this for? We need to route this message effectively to update the state of that game. update the state of the game, and then we can maybe send some kind of confirmation, hey, we got your message, back to the other user, just so that state doesn't get out of sync between the clients. And so then you have like your games directory, and so this drop down would populate from whatever games exist in your game directory. This is kind of the general idea. You'd have the game, the board is kind of a separate module. The message parser is a separate module. I don't know if this is going to have to be all that complex, because if you have unique game IDs, which I think is what I'm going to have to do, if you have unique game IDs, then it should be known, like, okay, we're routing this to this game. That game is chess. It might not be all that crazy. This might not even have to exist, potentially. And I think there's fleshing out that needs to happen here. So I mentioned that this bit, like how discoverability of other users, how's that going to work? So what I imagine when you start up the program is, one of the things is IP addresses change, right? So I'm on, my home network right now. I have a particular IP address. If I go to the coffee shop, my IP address is going to change. If I play from a different computer or whatever, like that's probably not going to happen in this case because it's not browser-based, it's desktop-based. But like, you get the idea. IP addresses change. And so with that, we need to have some method of keeping up with who is at what IP address, or where's the last IP address XYZ buddy of mine was at. And so I looked into some peer-to-peer stuff. Like, in general, I don't really want game messages going through some central server and getting routed somewhere. And I do not want like person-to-person chat messages going to a central server and then back out. I would love if the messages could be peer-to-peer. And so that said, I don't feel too freaked out by the idea of having a central server to keep up with who is where from an IP address perspective. And so this gets over to this idea. So what I'm thinking is we have a central server that basically keeps up with sort of your address book of IP addresses. So you have all these clients out here that have the game installed. When they boot up, it's going to look at IP address. It's going to just basically kind of confirm with the address book, hey, I am either still at the same IP address or my IP address has changed. Even if you change Wi-Fi in the same location, your IP address could change. And so there's going to need to be a bit of a dance of updating the address book. Basically, if and when your IP address changes, we need to notify the address book. And then effectively, what I'm imagining is almost sort of like a publisher-subscriber kind of action here, where you have like friends who have their IDs, their user IDs, right? And so then you can basically subscribe to your friend's IP address, and anytime their IP address changes, that change is going to get propagated out to your client. And so effectively, like, when you boot up, you just look for, does my local address book read the same as the global address book? Otherwise, make my changes so then I can actually play and talk to my friends. That's kind of the idea. And so then the actual game play messages and chat messages would be direct peer-to-peer, like node-to-node communications. And so what I'm thinking about there, what I had found for this was ZeroMQ. It also gets written with this kind of funky O, which I like, so I use that instead of writing out ZeroMQ. But this is kind of the idea. So this is a lot, obviously, and probably maybe a little overambitious for a first unguided project. But so we're going to see how it goes. Hopefully you'll have fun watching along. I'm really excited about this. I think if I can get this working right and can open source it, then there could be some really fun stuff. Maybe other folks can add other games. But yeah, I mean, that's basically it. And so excited to get to work on this. Obviously a lot of pre-work going into sort of the thought around how this thing's going to be structured, but super excited to kind of keep sharing the process with y'all as I go. So thanks. Peace.